Alexander, so tell me, you've been in a lot of prominent roles. How do you go about choosing your characters? Is there sort of a mental checklist, or do you just feel like there's something that draws you to the part?
Yeah, it's very. I go on instinct. It's a gut feeling. If I read something, I think, well, would I want to spend 3-4 months with this character? How intriguing is he to me? And that's kind of it. That's the only process I have.
On a gut level, I guess, to base it down, do I feel like getting up and doing this every day and working hard? And then the other primary thing is the story itself. As an actor, I'm there to serve a story, and I want to feel like, okay, is this a story that I love, that I think is, that I would want to watch, and is it something that I can really feel I can give something into, and my character brings something very specific to it.
And this particular story?
This one ticked them all. No, it did. I've always, as an Australian, I've always wanted to do period pieces, because you don't really get that chance in Australia. We don't have the budget and the size to really, to get into it, or the history of it. So I was really happy to do an English World War II, movie, and I loved, the small sort of relationships, and love and marriage, expanding then into the world stage, and it being about, what was going on inside these people's hearts and minds was what was going on inside the whole world collectively, and that Lewis was trying to put it together not just for his wife, but put together for his country, for Germany, and what he believed was the right thing to do after so much destruction.
It was so refreshing to read a World War II story, or post-World War II, that had so much nuance, and where a German character was portrayed with so much respect and depth, and that it was morally complex and interesting, that it wasn't, he's neither good nor bad, he's human like most people.
Mm-hmm. Would you have played him actually if the character was a hardcore Nazi?
No.
Okay.
Not that I wouldn't play a Nazi, but it has to be an interesting character. And in a movie like this, had he been, it wouldn't, in this type of narrative, it's not, if that feels redundant to me, and it's been done so many times, it doesn't add anything. And again, there's no moral complexity to that. Then you turn it, because I feel like a lot of World War II movies are narratively like a Star Wars movie. And no shade on Star Wars, I love Star Wars, but when you make a movie about the war, I think it's important to have more complexity to it. And it's not that easy. It's not like everyone on this side of the Allies was a hero, and everyone in Germany or Italy or the Axis were evil.
And there were some very traumatic scenes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know it was staged, but
yes.
How do you get into that mindset and, sort of when you're in that scene to envision what was really happening back then?
I really had to understand how much the Germans suffered. It's a lot of my history has been on, the battles of World War II, and I loved it as a kid and all that. But like literally, as it disintegrated to that end period, it's in that period of the war's over, and it's in that couple of months where it's chaos. I mean, foods needs to get through, medical supplies, everyone's making big geopolitical moves with the Russians and the Americans and the French, and there's all kinds of different things going on. So I read Berlin to start off with, which is the fall, which is the Red Army carving a path of chaos and payback. They'd suffered immensely. Don't take away what the Germans did, but the Germans, and that gave me some idea of where Lewis was coming from, of just like there'd been payback. I mean, they'd all seen, right or wrong. There's a sense of just because we won doesn't mean we're right.
It's interesting to see the aftermath of the war from Germany, you were in Hamburg just after the war, and to see the suffering and the pain and for the civilian population.
What kind of role have you not yet played that you'd like to take on next?
I'd like to play a Will Ferrell comedy. I'd like to toe-to-toe with John C. Reilly and Ferrell and just throw it down. I mean, I love, it's a complicated time. It's not to say we haven't been through complicated times before. And I love it when films can have some perspective on that. It doesn't mean we need to have an opinion, but they can give a viewer a window into it. We're watching the EU in troubled times. This was the beginning of the EU, of like the world saying, we can't keep having these wars starting and because of lack of communication and a lack of synergy. Chappaquiddick was did what I played Ted Kennedy was was me as a left-leaning Democrat taking a look at my own parties and people I believe their failings and going, okay, well, instead of pointing the finger at the Republicans, let's look at what we as a collective have done. So I like a movie that really looks at where we are. Maybe a Western that does something like that.